Troy Aikman just went on ESPN and said some things about this Cowboys team that every single one of us needs to hear right now, and I'm telling you, some of this is going to surprise you in the best way possible. Before we dive into what the Hall of Famer had to say about Christian Parker, about Dak Prescott, about this defense that was historically awful last season, and yes, even about the George Pickens situation, do me a favor and smash that subscribe button, because I'm getting killed on subscriber count right now, and we're out here grinding every single day to bring you Cowboys news the absolute second it happens, while everyone else is still sleeping on the updates. Alright, let's get right into this, because Aikman didn't hold back during his appearance on Get Up earlier today, and honestly, his take on the defense might be the most honest thing you'll hear all offseason. So Troy was asked about what he thinks of this defense heading into next season and whether Christian Parker is the guy who can turn this disaster around. And here's what stood out to me. Aikman basically said, look, they can only get better from here because let's be real, there's only one direction to go when you're dead last in the league. But here's the thing, he's actually excited about the Christian Parker hire, and he broke down why in a way that made a ton of sense. Troy pointed out that sometimes when you bring in a young coordinator who's been learning under great defensive minds his whole career, and he's hungry for his first real shot as a play caller, that's when magic can happen. Parker's resume speaks for itself if you actually look at where he's been and what he's learned. And apparently the players are genuinely fired up about what he's bringing to the table, which, if you know anything about football, you know that energy in the locker room matters more than people realize. Aikman also gave props to the front office for how they attacked the draft, focusing on defensive needs and trying to inject some actual talent on that side of the ball. Now here's where I get a little nervous, and Troy kind of hinted at this too, without saying it directly. The Cowboys have gone all in on the Christian Parker hype train, and I mean all in. Brian Schottenheimer talks about him like he's the second coming, Jerry Jones is praising him, Stephen Jones is hyping him up, and the messaging from the organization has been non-stop about how this dude is going to save the defense. Look, I'm excited too, but here's what nobody is talking about. What happens if we put all our eggs in the coordinator basket and act like he's the only reason things will improve? That worries me because if Christian Parker is as good as everyone thinks he's going to be, he's not sticking around for 5 years, he's going to be a head coach somewhere, and we'll be right back to square one. The Cowboys did make other moves on defense, they did add pieces, and we can't just pretend like Parker is walking into the same exact roster that gave up 35 points a game and waved the white flag every single week. But the pressure on this man is already insane, and we haven't even hit training camp yet. The question isn't whether the defense will be better, because come on, they were literally 32nd in the league, depending on how you measure it. The question is how much better, and is that improvement enough to actually compete for a championship in 2025? Let me ask you this, and be honest in the comments, where do you think this Cowboys defense finishes at the end of the season? Top 20? Top 15? Are we being delusional if we think they can crack the top 10? Because right now it's Kool-Aid season and everyone's drunk on optimism, but we gotta keep it real with ourselves. And the crazy part is Aikman didn't just talk defense. He had a lot to say about the offense too, and this is where it gets really interesting. Troy made the point that what gets completely lost in all the negativity from last season is that the Cowboys' offense was absolutely elite. Like we're talking top 5 in the league no matter how you slice it. Prolific is the word he used, and he's not wrong. Dak Prescott, when healthy, was putting up career-type numbers. CeeDee Lamb had an insane year. George Pickens came in and immediately became a problem for defenses. And even guys like Rico Dowdle and Jake Ferguson were contributing at high levels. Aikman compared it to what happened with Joe Burrow and the Bengals a couple years back, where the quarterback plays at an MVP level but the team still misses the playoffs because everything else falls apart. That's exactly what happened to Dallas, and it's infuriating when you really think about it. The offense was more than good enough to be a playoff team. They were good enough to win the division, and yet here we are talking about what went wrong instead of preparing for a postseason run. Now, Troy did point out that the offense wasn't perfect, and there's room to grow, especially in the red zone, where they left points on the field by settling for field goals or failing to finish drives. Imagine if they convert just a few more of those trips inside the 20 into touchdowns instead of 3 points. We're talking about an offense that could have been even more dangerous. But here's the kicker, and this is where Aikman really nailed it. The reason the offense had to be that good is because the defense was that bad. Think about the pressure that puts on your quarterback and your playmakers when you know you have to score 30-plus points just to have a chance to win. Think about how exhausting that is over the course of a 17-game season when there's no margin for error, because if you only put up 24 points this week, you're probably taking an L. Aikman said something that really stuck with me, and it ties into what the goal should be for this upcoming year. He said the numbers on offense might not look as good this season, and if you're a Cowboys fan, you should actually hope they don't look as good. Wait, what? Let me explain, because this is brilliant. If the offense doesn't have to put up 35 points a game, that means the defense is actually doing its job and taking pressure off Dak and the guys. It means we're winning games 24-17 instead of 42-38 in a shootout where both defenses are getting cooked. When's the last time the Cowboys defense actually won you a game? Like legitimately put the team on its back and shut down an elite offense when it mattered most? I'm talking about a game where you walked away saying, "Man, our defense saved us today." For me, I gotta go back to that Thanksgiving game against the Saints when Jordan Lewis picked off Drew Brees and returned it for a touchdown to seal the win against Alvin Kamara and that offense. And that was, 6 or 7 years ago? That's not normal for a team that wants to compete for a Super Bowl. The defense has been a burden, a rotting corpse that the offense has been dragging through the mud trying to get to safety. And that can't happen again if this team wants to be taken seriously. Every single week last season, it felt like we were making backup-level quarterbacks look like Patrick Mahomes, and elite offenses were putting up video game numbers. And that's not an exaggeration. On average, the opposing offense playing against the Cowboys' defense would have been the best offense in the league that week based on how they performed against us. Let that sink in. It's hard to overstate just how historically terrible that defense was, and it's even harder to win consistently when your offense knows they can't have an off day, or even an average day, because average means you're losing by 2 touchdowns. That level of stress compounds everything. It leads to pressing, it leads to mistakes, and it leads to the kind of season we just suffered through. And the craziest part is we're sitting here talking about whether the defense can just be average, not great, not elite, just average, and if they can manage that, this team is a legitimate playoff contender. That's how low the bar is right now, but it's also how good the offense is, and how much talent is on this roster. Now, of course, ESPN couldn't help themselves, and they had to bring up George Pickens because controversy sells, and they wanted Aikman's take on the whole franchise tag drama. Troy's response was pretty measured and honestly exactly what you'd expect from someone who understands the business side of football. He acknowledged that Pickens is obviously not thrilled about getting franchise tagged, especially after the monster season he just put together. Any player in that situation would feel some type of way because you go out there, you ball out, you put up numbers that make you one of the best at your position, and then instead of getting the long-term security and generational wealth of a massive extension, you get slapped with a 1-year tag. It's a letdown even though the money is still great. And then Stephen Jones comes out publicly and says, "We're not signing him to a long-term deal right now," which I'm sure did wonders for George's mood. Aikman's point was valid though. What does that do to a player's frame of mind heading into the season? How do you stay locked in and motivated when you feel disrespected by the organization? Time will tell, is what Troy said, and I think that's the right answer because we don't know yet. But here's what nobody is talking about. If George Pickens can go out and have another elite season alongside CeeDee Lamb and they both stay healthier than they were last year, the offense is going to be absolutely unstoppable. And the defense won't need to be elite, they'll just need to be competent. I think Troy's right on that front. As for the Pickens drama, I'm hoping we're through the worst of it. George hasn't been on social media stirring things up recently, and I think once he shows up to mandatory minicamp, we can all exhale and move forward. If he's not there, then yeah, we've got a problem, and it's a conversation worth having, but until then, I'm choosing to believe this gets resolved quietly, and we can focus on football. Let me ask you this. Are we done with the George Pickens drama, or is this going to drag on all offseason? Drop a comment and let me know if you think he's going to be locked in, or if this is going to be a distraction all year, because I'm genuinely curious what the fan base thinks right now. Aikman also talked specifically about Dak Prescott and his leadership, which is something that doesn't get talked about enough in my opinion. Troy was asked how Dak manages to keep everyone happy when you've got CeeDee Lamb who wants his targets, George Pickens who wants the ball, Rico Dowdle who had a 1,000-yard season and wants to stay involved, and even guys like Jake Ferguson who are key pieces of the offense. It's a legitimate question because egos are real in the NFL and everybody wants to eat. Aikman's answer was perfect. He said Dak handles it really well because he's a veteran and his leadership skills shine in those exact situations. When you have an offense that's talented, there's going to be conversations about who gets the ball and when. And the quarterback has to be the guy who manages those personalities and keeps everyone on the same page. Troy gave Dak a ton of credit for being that kind of facilitator, and honestly, I think he's right. Say what you want about Dak Prescott, and trust me, I know there are plenty of people in the fan base who have strong opinions both ways, but his ability to lead that locker room and keep everyone unified is something that doesn't show up on the stat sheet, but matters a whole lot when you're trying to win games. Aikman also praised CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens for the way they worked together last season because there were real questions about how that dynamic would play out. You bring in a guy like Pickens who, in a lot of people's eyes, is a true number one receiver on most teams, and you already have CeeDee who's getting paid like a top 3 receiver in the league. How does that work? Do egos clash? Does somebody get jealous of the other guy's targets? But by all accounts, those two were locked in from day one, and the production on the field backed it up. That's a credit to both of them for being pros, and it's a credit to Dak for managing the offense in a way that keeps everyone involved and everyone feeling valued. Troy's been a fan of Dak for a long time, and I think part of that is because he's been in those shoes before. Being the Dallas Cowboys quarterback is not the same as being the quarterback for some small market team where nobody cares. The scrutiny, the pressure, the media circus, the expectations, all of that comes with the star on your helmet, and not everyone can handle it. Dak's handled it pretty damn well for almost a decade now, and whether you think he's the guy to win a Super Bowl or not, you have to respect the way he's carried himself through all the noise. And here's the bottom line. If Dak stays healthy, this offense is going to be elite again. The weapons are there, the offensive line is solid, the play calling should be better under Schottenheimer, and the chemistry is already built. The question is, can the defense get closer to average? Because if they can, this team is absolutely a playoff team, and maybe more than that. Aikman's right when he says that's the key to everything. The offense did its job last year, the defense failed miserably, and if those roles can balance out even a little bit, we're talking about a completely different season. I know it's May. I know it's the offseason. I know we're all drinking the Kool-Aid right now and getting hyped up over every little piece of news. But man, it's hard not to be optimistic when you hear a legend like Troy Aikman breaking it down and pointing out that this team is closer than people think. The talent is there, the coaching changes have been made, the draft picks are in, and now it's just about execution. So here's my final thought on all of this. Troy Aikman didn't say anything that should shock us, but he did validate a lot of what we've been feeling as fans. The defense was a disaster, and Christian Parker has a massive opportunity to turn it around. The offense was elite, and should be elite again, if everyone stays healthy. George Pickens needs to lock in and move past the contract stuff, because this team needs him, and Dak Prescott is the leader of this team, whether people want to admit it or not. The path to a playoff spot and a deep run is right there in front of us, And it all comes down to whether the defense can stop being a liability. That's it. That's the whole season in a nutshell. If the defense can just be average, if they can just not give up 40 points a game, if they can just make a stop when it matters, this team is dangerous. And if Christian Parker is half as good as everyone thinks he is, we're going to be just fine. Before you go, make sure you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because we're grinding every day to bring you the best Cowboys content on YouTube, and we need your support to keep growing. Drop a comment below and tell me where you think this defense finishes in the league rankings and whether you believe in the Christian Parker hype or if you think we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. Let's talk about it because this is going to be a wild ride and I want to hear what you think. Go Cowboys!